I didn't think my life could unravel in a single afternoon, but that was before my realtor looked at me and said, "I might have a temporary solution." Those words should have sounded harmless, helpful even. Instead, my stomach dropped the second he said them. A few hours earlier, I'd been standing in the middle of an empty apartment with peeling paint and a smell that reminded me of wet cardboard, realizing I had officially run out of options. My lease was up. The owner had decided to renovate, which was landlord speak for double the rent and kick me out. Every backup plan I had lined up fell through one by one. Friends had couches, but not long-term. Hotels were a joke. My savings were already bleeding, and now I was homeless. Not in a dramatic movie way, just quietly screwed. Spencer was leaning against the kitchen counter, phone in hand, scrolling through listings he already knew wouldn't work for me. He was my realtor, technically, but after 3 months of apartment tours, rejection emails, and overpriced disasters, he'd started to feel like the only person who actually understood how bad things were getting. He glanced up at me, his expression shifting. Not professional anymore. Personal. "Ian," he said carefully, "how long do you actually have?" I let out a breath that was halfway to a laugh. "Until Sunday night." That made him stop scrolling. "Like, this Sunday? Like I'll be sleeping in my car by Monday if something doesn't happen." Silence stretched between us. The distant hum of traffic drifted through the open window. I could feel the weight of it then, the humiliation, the fear, the fact that I was a grown man who had done everything right and still ended up here. Spencer rubbed the back of his neck. He did that when he was thinking. I'd noticed it weeks ago, along with other things I tried not to think about, like the way his sleeves always rolled up to his forearms, or how his voice dropped when he wasn't in work mode. "Okay," he said slowly. "Don't freak out. That was never a good sign." "I'm already freaking out," I said. "That ship sailed." He hesitated, then finally met my eyes. "I have a spare room." I blinked. "What?" "At my place," he added quickly, like he needed to clarify before I filled in the blanks myself. "It's not huge, but it's clean. Furnished. You'd have your own space." My brain stalled for a second. "You're offering me a room?" "Temporarily," he said. "Just until we find you something permanent. No pressure. No weirdness. No weirdness, right?" I stared at him, trying to process the fact that my realtor, who I'd met 6 months ago as a stranger with a clipboard, was now offering to let me move into his apartment. "You know that's not normal, right?" I said. He gave a small, crooked smile. "Yeah, that's why I haven't offered it until now." There it was, the part he wasn't saying out loud. He knew I was desperate. I should have said no immediately. He wasn't just helpful and kind, he was attractive in that effortless, grown-up way. Calm, confident, the kind of guy who made you feel seen when he listened. And now he was offering me a roof over my head. "I don't want to impose," I said, even though my chest felt tight at the idea of refusing. "You wouldn't be," he replied. "Short-term, rent-free at first if that helps. I just don't like the idea of you sleeping in your car." That hit harder than it should have. I looked around the empty apartment again. The cracked tiles, the silence, the realization that Sunday was coming fast. "Temporary?" I repeated, more to myself than to him. Spencer nodded. "Temporary." I swallowed. "Okay." The relief on his face was immediate, and for just a second, something else flashed there too. Something unreadable. "Okay?" he echoed. "Okay," I said again. "I'll take the temporary solution." I had no idea then that those words were the moment everything started to change. I moved into Spencer's apartment 2 days later with my entire life packed into the back of my car. That alone should have been my first warning. When I pulled up outside his building, it didn't look like the kind of place someone with a spare room casually mentioned. Clean brick exterior, quiet street, the kind of neighborhood where people walk their dogs like they belong there. I sat in the driver's seat longer than necessary, gripping the steering wheel, trying to shake the feeling that I was stepping into something I didn't fully understand yet. Spencer came outside before I even shut the engine off. "Hey," he said, smiling like this was no big deal, like he didn't just save me from sleeping in my car. He grabbed one of my boxes without asking. You didn't pack light, huh? I snorted. This is light. You should have seen what I left behind. That earned a quiet look from him. Not pity. Something closer to concern. Inside his place was him. Clean but lived in. Neutral colors. Plants that were somehow still alive. Framed photos on the walls that suggested a life I knew nothing about. Travel shots. Friends. A couple of candid ones that made my chest tighten for no logical reason. This is the spare room, he said, opening a door at the end of the hall. It wasn't huge, but it was comfortable. Bed already made. Desk by the window. A closet that wasn't empty, but clearly cleared for me. You didn't have to do all this? I said quietly. He shrugged. I had time. That was another thing he didn't explain. How long he'd been thinking about this. The first night was awkward in that polite, careful way. We ordered takeout. Sat on opposite ends of the couch. Talked about listings like nothing had changed, even though everything had. I was hyper-aware of my presence in his space, every sound I made. Every time I crossed the hallway in socks. Every time our eyes met just a second longer than necessary. I told myself it was stress, exhaustion, gratitude tangled with embarrassment. But then little things started happening. Mornings, for one. Spencer was a morning person. I wasn't. I'd stumble into the kitchen half asleep to find coffee already brewed. Not made for me, he never said that, but my mug was always clean, sitting on the counter like it had been waiting. Sometimes he'd already be there, sleeves rolled up, focused on his phone. Other times, he'd look up and say, "Morning." One morning I realized I was timing my wake-ups just to run into him. That scared me. We fell into a rhythm that felt domestic, too comfortable, cooking dinner together, sitting at the table instead of the couch, talking about things that had nothing to do with apartments, childhood stuff, bad dates, the way he casually mentioned his last relationship, not she, and how I pretended my heart didn't jump at that. One night, about a week in, the power went out during a storm. We were both in the living room, the rain pounding hard against the windows. The lights cut suddenly, plunging everything into darkness. Shit, I muttered. Spencer laughed softly. I've got candles somewhere. He came back a minute later, the warm glow filling the room in a way that made everything feel slower. Closer. We sat across from each other at the table, candle between us. Rain humming in the background. This wasn't what I meant by temporary solution, I said, trying to sound casual. He tilted his head. Regretting it? I hesitated. No, just didn't expect it to feel like this. Like what? He asked gently. I didn't answer right away. He leaned back slightly, studying me. Ian, if this ever feels uncomfortable, you tell me. I meant what I said. No pressure. No expectations. I nodded, relieved and disappointed in a way I hated myself for. Thanks, I said. Later that night, lying in the spare bed, I stared at the ceiling, listening to the familiar sounds of someone else moving around. Cupboard closing, water running, life continuing just beyond the wall. I realized then that Spencer hadn't just given me a place to stay. He'd given me something worse. Hope. And I had a feeling it was going to cost me more than I was ready to admit. The first crack in our carefully maintained, "This is just temporary" bubble came on a Tuesday night. I remember because Tuesdays had become our quiet nights. No takeout, no wine, just whatever we could throw together from the fridge and some half-watched show playing in the background. I was rinsing dishes when Spencer leaned against the counter beside me. You don't have to do that, he said. I can finish. I'm already wet, I replied without thinking, holding up the plate. The second the words left my mouth, I froze. Spencer did too. For a split second, the air between us went completely still. I turned back to the sink too fast, my heart pounding. Didn't mean it like that. I know, he replied, but his voice sounded different, thicker, like he didn't quite believe it. After that, things shifted. Nothing obvious. No big moment. Just awareness. Every movement felt deliberate. Every glance loaded. I started noticing the way Spencer looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention, like he was trying to decide something and losing. I caught him once, standing in the hallway outside my room, pretending to check his phone when I stepped out. We didn't talk about it. The breaking point came the night I found out just how temporary my situation really was. I'd gotten another rejection email that afternoon. Too many applicants. Cash offers. No exceptions. I stared at my phone longer than necessary, feeling that old panic rise up again. Spencer noticed immediately. "Bad news?" he asked from the couch. I nodded. "Another no." He muted the TV. "How many is that now?" I stopped counting. He sat there for a moment, jaw tight. "This market is bullshit." I laughed weakly. "You don't have to tell me. I'm living in your spare room because of it." The words came out sharper than I meant. His eyes flicked up to mine. "Hey, you're not living here. You're staying." "Yeah," I said. "Temporarily." Something darkened in his expression, not anger. Frustration. Like he was tired of pretending too. "Is that what you want?" he asked. The question hit me harder than it should have. "I don't know what I want," I admitted. "I just know I don't want to overstay my welcome." "You wouldn't," he said immediately. "That's easy for you to say," I replied. "You're the one with the apartment." He stood up then, suddenly too close. "Ian," I offered. "You didn't take anything from me." "And what if I did?" I asked softly. "What if I am taking something?" His breath hitched. "Just barely." "Then I'd tell you," he said. I searched his face. "Would you?" "Yes." There was a beat of silence. Then another. I should have stepped back. Instead, I said, "I don't think I'm ready to leave yet." His eyes held mine. "Okay." That was it. One word. Later that night, I woke up thirsty and padded into the kitchen in the dark. The apartment was quiet except for the low hum of the fridge. I poured myself water, still half asleep, when I heard a voice behind me. "You can't keep doing that." I jumped. "Jesus, Spencer." He stood a few feet away, hair messy, t-shirt stretched across his chest like he'd just gotten out of bed. "Doing what?" I asked. "Acting like this doesn't mean something," he said quietly. My heart started racing. "It doesn't have to." He shook his head. "That's not fair." "To who?" I whispered. "To either of us." The silence between us felt electric now, thick and undeniable. I realized then that this wasn't about housing anymore. "I offered you a temporary solution," he said. "But you need to tell me if staying here is becoming something else." I swallowed hard, because the truth was it already had. And I didn't know if I was brave enough to say it out loud. I didn't answer him right away. We stood there in the kitchen, barefoot, half awake. The clock on the microwave glowing an unforgiving 2:17 a.m. The kind of hour where honesty slips out whether you're ready for it or not. "Spencer," I said finally, my voice low. "I didn't plan for this." "Neither did I," he replied. There was no accusation in his tone, just truth. I leaned back against the counter, fingers gripping the edge like I needed the support. "You helped me when I had nowhere to go. I don't want to mess that up by misreading things." He took a breath, slow and controlled. "You're not." That landed harder than anything else he could have said. I looked up at him. "You're sure?" His jaw tightened slightly, like he was choosing his words carefully. "I've been sure for a while." That should have terrified me. Instead, it made something in my chest loosen. "But," he continued, "I didn't say anything because you're in a vulnerable spot, and I didn't want you to ever wonder if there were strings attached." I nodded, swallowing. "There aren't." "I know," he said. "That's why this is complicated." The rain had started again outside, tapping softly against the windows. "So what are we doing?" I asked. Spencer looked at me for a long moment. Then he stepped back. "Tonight," he said, "we go back to bed." Disappointment flared before I could stop it. "And tomorrow?" I asked. A faint smile tugged at his mouth. "Tomorrow we keep pretending we're handling this like adults." I laughed quietly. "We're terrible at that." "Yeah," he said. Then came the showing. A listing finally popped up that didn't feel like a joke. decent price, good location, small but livable. Spencer was unusually quiet as we walked through it together, professional mask firmly back in place. "It's solid," he said. "If you want it, I can push hard." I looked around the empty living room, trying to imagine myself there, alone. "How fast would I need to move?" I asked. His eyes flicked to me. "Soon." Something twisted in my stomach. That night, back at his place, I sat on the edge of the spare bed staring at my phone. The email draft was open. All I had to do was say yes. Instead, I found myself in the living room doorway. Watching Spencer fold laundry on the couch like this was the most normal thing in the world. "If I get this place," I said, "I'll be out by the end of the month." He didn't look up right away. "That's how it works." "I know," I said. "I'm just saying it out loud." He nodded slowly. "Okay." Silence stretched again. "I don't regret staying here," I added. He finally looked at me then. "Me neither." The words hung between us, heavy with everything we weren't saying. Spencer stood up, stepping closer, stopping just short of touching me. "Ian, once you move out, this either ends cleanly or it starts honestly. I can't do something in between." My pulse thundered in my ears. "So you're saying dash?" "I'm saying," he interrupted gently, "that if anything happens, it needs to be because you want me, not because you need a place to stay." I met his gaze, heart pounding. "And if I want both?" I asked quietly. He exhaled, something like relief crossing his face. "Then we wait until you don't need one of them." It was the most frustratingly responsible thing anyone had ever said to me. But as he stepped back, giving me space again, I realized something that scared me even more than losing the apartment. I didn't want to leave anymore, and for the first time in a long while, I wasn't sure which part of that terrified me more. The approval email came 3 days later. I was sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop open, pretending to job hunt while actually spiraling, when my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, expecting another polite rejection. Instead, it said, "Application approved." My chest tightened. This was it. The thing I'd been begging for weeks ago. Proof that my life was getting back on track. "Hey," Spencer said from the stove. "You just made a face. Good news or bad?" I looked up at him. Really looked at him. The familiar safety of his apartment. The quiet routine we'd built. The way my body had started to relax here in a way it hadn't in months. "I got it," I said. He froze for half a second, then smiled. "That's great, Ian." I nodded. "Yeah, it is." We hugged. Night, the apartment felt different, like we were already counting down. We ordered dinner but barely ate. Talked about logistics, move-in dates, furniture, normal stuff that felt weirdly heavy. "So," he said finally, leaning back on the couch, "guess the temporary solution worked." I smiled faintly. Guess it did. The silence after that was thick. "I'm proud of you," he added quietly. That shouldn't have mattered as much as it did. My last week there passed too quickly. Boxes appeared in my room again, this time heading in the opposite direction. Spencer gave me space but not distance. He helped me pack, let me vent, made coffee like always. On my final night, the apartment felt unbearably quiet. I stood in the doorway of the spare room, now empty except for a mattress on the floor. "This room feels smaller," I said. He leaned against the frame across from me. "It always was." I hesitated. "Spencer, can I ask you something?" He nodded. "Anything. If I hadn't needed a place to stay," I said carefully, "would you have asked me out?" He didn't answer right away. "Yes," he said finally. "Eventually." My heart thudded. "Eventually?" He smiled softly. "I wanted you settled first. Standing on your own." I swallowed. "I am." "I know," he said. "That's why I'm asking now." I looked up at him, pulse roaring in my ears. "Would you like to go out with me?" Spencer asked. No hesitation, no ambiguity, just honesty. I laughed, breathless. "You could have asked me that a week ago and saved us both a lot of stress." He chuckled. "Probably." "So?" he asked. I stepped closer. Yes, the kiss wasn't dramatic. No fireworks. Just slow, certain, real. The kind that felt earned. When I left the next morning, keys handed back, boxes loaded, I expected to feel hollow. Instead, I felt grounded. The temporary solution had ended. What came next finally felt permanent. Moving into my own place should have felt like freedom. Instead, the first night alone felt loud. I sat on the floor of my new apartment surrounded by half-open boxes, eating cold pizza straight from the box because I couldn't find a plate. The place was quiet in a way that made every thought echo. No footsteps in the hallway. No low hum of Spencer moving around in the kitchen. Just me and the reality that I'd finally landed on my feet. I checked my phone more times than I wanted to admit. Spencer didn't text right away. And that was okay. It had to be okay. We'd agreed to do this right, no blurred lines, no backsliding into something that felt safe just because it was familiar. Still, when my phone finally buzzed, my heart jumped. Spencer, made it in okay? I smiled like an idiot. Me? Yeah. Place is empty, but it's mine. A pause. Then, Spencer, proud of you. Those 3 words hit harder now than they ever had when I was living under his roof. Because this time, they weren't tied to rescue or obligation. Just respect. Our first real date happened a week later. Not casual. Not a let's grab coffee and see. Spencer showed up at my door with flowers, nothing dramatic. Just simple, thoughtful. I laughed when I saw them. You didn't have to do that, I said. I wanted to, he replied. Dinner was easy. Too easy. Like we'd already skipped the awkward first date phase and landed somewhere honest. We talked about stupid things, serious things, laughed more than we drank. At one point, I caught him watching me the same way he had in his apartment, like he was quietly taking me in. What? I asked. He shook his head. It's different seeing you like this. Like what? Standing on your own. That did something to me. Something warm and steady. The relationship unfolded slowly after that. Deliberately. No rushing. No pretending we weren't both a little cautious. But every time I stayed over at his place or he stayed at mine, it felt intentional. Chosen. One night, months later, we were lying in his bed. Lights off. City noise drifting in through the window. You ever think about how close we came to never doing this? I asked. He hummed. All the time. What would have happened if I'd said no that day? He turned his head toward me. You would have figured it out. You always do. And you? He smiled softly. I would have wondered. I rested my head against him, feeling the solid certainty of where we were now. Funny thing about temporary solutions. Sometimes they don't just give you a place to land. Sometimes they give you the space to become someone ready to stay. About 6 months in, something unexpected happened. Not bad, just real. It was a Sunday morning, lazy and quiet, the kind that used to make me anxious when I was alone. Spencer was in my kitchen, barefoot, wearing one of my old t-shirts like it belonged to him. Coffee brewed, windows open. The city felt far away. I watched him move around like he knew the place. Because he did. You're staring again, he said without turning around. I like my view, I replied. He smiled, then grew thoughtful. Can I ask you something? I nodded. Sure. Do you ever think about how we started? He asked. I mean, if the power dynamic still bothers you. I sat up a little straighter. I'd wondered when that conversation would come. No, I said honestly. It did at first. I was scared I'd always feel like I owed you something. I paused. But I don't anymore. He turned to face me fully now. Why? Because you let me leave, I said simply. You didn't hold on tighter when you could have. That landed. I could see it in his face. He crossed the room and sat beside me. I cared too much to trap you in that. I leaned into him. That's why this works. Life didn't suddenly turn perfect after that. We fought sometimes about stupid things, about real things, about work schedules, about whose place we were at too often, about control, independence, space. But every argument ended the same way, with honesty, not fear. One night, long after we'd moved past the beginning, Spencer said something that made my chest tighten in the best way. I never told you, he said, half asleep. But that day you told me you had nowhere to go? I knew if I didn't offer, I'd regret it forever. I smiled into the darkness. I was terrified you'd think I was taking advantage. I thought you were brave, he replied. That's when I understood it fully. The temporary solution didn't just save me from being homeless. It stripped both of us down to something honest: need, care, choice. And when everything unnecessary fell away, what was left wasn't obligation or gratitude or debt. It was love. Not dramatic, not rushed, just solid, chosen, and permanent. A year after the day Spencer said, temporary solution, I stood in that same neighborhood again. Different reason this time. We were walking hand in hand, not rushing, just letting the afternoon stretch. The street looked exactly the same: brick buildings, quiet sidewalks, dogs tugging at leashes. If someone had told the version of me from back then that I'd be here like this, calm and steady, I wouldn't have believed them. You're awfully quiet, Spencer said, squeezing my hand. Just thinking, I replied. Dangerous. I smiled. Do you remember the first night I stayed at your place? He laughed softly. Hard to forget. You apologized for literally everything. I was terrified, I admitted. I kept thinking any wrong move would make you regret helping me. He stopped walking and turned to face me. Ian, I never regretted it. Not once. I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt the weight of the last year settle into something warm and solid. The fights we survived. The space we respected. The way we chose each other again and again without fear hanging over us. You know, I said, that was the lowest point of my life. And somehow, he said gently, also the start of something good. That night, back at his place, our place now, even if neither of us said it yet, we sat on the couch with the windows open, city lights blinking outside. No big moment, no dramatic speech. I hadn't just found a place to live. I'd found stability, partnership, a life that didn't feel like it could vanish overnight. Funny how desperation brought me to Spencer's door. But choice is what kept me there. And this time, there was nothing temporary about it.